Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Some people would describe this as the toughest gig, given it's the last presentation on the last day, after a good lunch, and I've just been on an all-night flight back from Saudi Arabia. But my dad, who was a northern comedian, would say, "Nothing, lad, I used to play Barnsley Working Men's Club at lunchtime before the stripper." So in the last days, you'll have seen lots of presentations featuring very high science, fantastic mathematics, wonderful physics. You will have nothing of that in my presentation. I'm going to talk to you about user experience. You know, Schlumberger has a great history of amazing science, but they don't quite have as amazing a history in user experience in software. So that's what we're going to talk about. And it's a very tricky subject when you think about changing a user experience. Remember what happened when these guys went from Windows 7 to Windows 8, all the publicity about how they ruined it. Or, you know, many of you were probably, as I was, great Excel experts before the ribbons came along. And when the ribbons came along, you suddenly didn't know how to use the product. So changing a user experience on a well-known product is a really risky, dangerous affair. In our business, the geoscience business, we work with guys who are geologists, reservoir engineers, geophysicists. They are a conservative bunch of guys. I think he's playing Doom here, but actually what they're doing all the time is they are playing with petrol. And it's part of their CV. They've become experts in this software. Their position of power in the company is because they know how to do things that nobody else knows how to do. And you come along and change the user interface, and suddenly the young guy who's really good at Star Wars games or something can be as good as the old guy. And so it's really dangerous when you start changing user interface to win your audience. And this is particularly true of a product like Petrel. Petrel is by any measure the most successful software that's ever been released in the petroleum business. This is just one graph. This is basically the number of licenses. You know, this is 20,000 people out there using this thing. This is, you know, back here, this was 20 million revenue, 700 million revenue with 30 or 40% IBT. This is a highly successful software. And you don't get successful like that unless the people love your software. So the guys love Petrel. When it first came out, why did they choose it? It was because the user experience was wonderful. And they could do things really nicely compared to their old Unix boxes. So we had to come up, we felt we had to redesign Petrel, but against a backdrop of a highly successful product that everybody loved. But we had to do something, because the software itself was developed as a modeling tool back in the late 90s, with an interface designed for modeling. And what have we done in the last 15 years or so? We've added geophysics and reservoir engineering and drilling, and we've added all kind of workflows to this. And so the user interface was getting stretched. It couldn't cope anymore. We were having too many icons around the place, too much real estate being consumed by panels, too much mouse travel. You know, I had to go over here and then back over here to drive the thing. And a very important thing is process driven. Because we didn't used to have many processes, you would be in a situation where you say, well, now I'm doing geophysical interpretation. I'm in this process, and I do some geophysics, but now I want to make a surface. I have to switch process to make surface process. And this starts to get very inefficient. So we had to try and address all of these deficiencies. And it's quite a challenge to know how to start. So the key thing was, you know, when you attack a project like this, there's no magic productivity key on your keyboard. There's no silver bullet. You just do this and everything will be fantastic. You know, you can't just go and get a special recipe and say, okay, let's use this recipe, we'll have a super productive product. No, you have to have some kind of strategy. And our strategy was to be very systematic, based along three key principles. The first one was we wanted to focus on the relevant workflows. Try to, whenever we did a design, say what's the guy trying to do? What's the workflow involved here? Secondly, that the idea that the user needs to stay close to their data. And then thirdly, while we were doing this, measure the productivity, measure what we were doing. Because it's very hard to judge if you've been successful in designing a user interface. You need to make some measurements to be able to quantify it. And I think one of the key innovations of this team was that the IT people designed what would you call it, an environment that would allow domain people to design interface. Because domain people, geophysicists don't know how to, program, but the IT people built a base system where it would allow the geophysicists and the geologists to build the system for themselves. And that was a very key innovation, because this allowed a fast feedback loop and also putting the design in the hands of the guys who knew the workflows. And the workflows getting really, really complex. I mean, Beardsell started with a couple of these guys. And now it's got all the reservoir engineers, the drilling engineers, and it's got, in fact, a lot of Schlumberger riding on the back of Beardsell now. So we had to have something that could deal with a multitude of workflows whilst keeping things simple and easy to use. We have to deal now with more and more data. And this is just an example of things like number of wells per engineer. I mean, they're drilling wells at such a rate now. You've no longer got the luxury of sitting there looking at one well every week for each engineer. The average engineer is following 10, 20 wells in a given day. And you've got this, everybody shows this graph, of course, the graph of how old we all are. I think I'm here somewhere. I'm nearly dead, I think. This just shows that a few years ago we had a lot of very competent people in the industry in their 40s, whereas now, 2015, we're a bunch of young people and very few of the older crowd left, especially with the recession now, they're all retiring. So we had to come up with an interface that allowed the transfer of knowledge and was easy to use for the new Xbox generation. And of course, we had to follow a good route in terms of being more productive. We have to be more productive. We've got less people, more data. The only solution is more productivity. So I'm going to jump to just take a quick look at what Beardsell 2014, where we brought in this user interface, looks like, because that gives you an idea of how we follow these principles of staying close to the data and following workflows. So I think this has to work with a video. This is a guy picking seismic. You'll notice that the cursor, the little hand, you've got to watch that. It's staying near the center of the screen. He's picking along a seismic line. If he wants to auto track, he's going to something close to the screen. It's not going up to the top or to the left, he's auto tracking. And now he wants a surface. He could go up and make a surface on the toolbar, but no, he can stay in the center of the screen and say, make a surface. The surface comes in automatically, or the surface tool comes in automatically, which because of the concept of active object, all of the parameters of the making surface can be filled in automatically, and when we hit OK, we get the surface immediately in the canvas. The user now might want to change the color of this surface. So instead of going to some tool, it's a right mouse, mini map, mini toolbar, just like you would have in Excel or PowerPoint, to be able to change the colors here. If we continue on, we've auto-tracked part of this surface, but there's an area over in the bottom corner there that's not been tracked. So the user would zoom in. So again, staying centralized in the user interface. Zoom in, choose a tool to pick seismic, not change process, but just choose a seismic picking tool. Pick some new points. Rapidly find the auto-track tool, get the auto-track, right mouse on the surface and regenerate. So it's all, I'm trying to show there that we're staying centralized in the screen. The user's not having to move his eyes all over the place. So we might want to, at this point, limit the area of this surface. Before, we've had to go to a different process to draw a polygon, but this polygon drawing is inside the seismic interpretation tool set. So we can just select the polygon picking tool, the parameters of that tool are in something called a call-out of the toolbox, and the user can now just click through and make the polygon. I think we got the same surface. Yeah, so the user has now got the tool for picking a polygon. You can pick the polygon, interact with the polygon, close the polygon, and a common operation at this point would be to say, I want to make that surface only within the polygon. So again, I don't have to go and find something on the outside. I can stay in the center of the view, bring up the parameters that made that surface and say, well, now I want to drop the polygon into the process. A new tool here is click on the surface and say, hide everything else, so that I can just see the final surface. And if you like, that's my result. So throughout that demonstration, we kept in place the ribbons on top of the screen, and we kept in place the trees, but in fact, the user, in many cases when they're doing interactive work now in Petrel, could hide this ribbon on the top, and they could hide the tree structure of the data on the left, hide this ribbon, and now have a very large working area, so reducing maximizing screen real estate, and using very much the concept of mini toolbar, just as you might in PowerPoint to change a font size or something like that. So these innovative concepts the team came up with were concepts such as perspectives. We used to have a product that could do everything. Now we're saying, let's find a way to make this specialized for a drilling engineer or for a geophysicist. So by choosing a perspective, say seismic to simulation, or let's say geology and geophysics, that will shrink the user interface down to just the tools that a geologist and a geophysicist might want to use. So we've got 5 or 6 different perspectives, and we're able now to create customized versions of Petrel for specific tasks. So we've come up with an unconventional perspective that just gives you the tools for working in the shales. And once you've chosen this perspective, you get a certain set of domain tabs, and the domain tabs are organized left to right in a very workflow orientated way. And that left to right concept follows through from perspectives into the actual, each individual domain tab. So for example, this is seismic, and you've got a set of tools here that will kind of lead you through seismic interpretation. Let's move faster through. And the ribbon at the top will basically launch processes or some kind of interactive task, but guide you through the workflow. Very key thing is the tool palette. So this is a focused set of tools for a specific task, all the things that require some kind of interactive work. And in the old design of Petrel, something like polygons, you see there's about 6 icons for editing polygons now in Petrel. There used to be about 22. And a lot of those icons were things like switches. A switch to say, I want to make rectangles. But now all of that's captured in this thing we call the call-out. So it's a much more structured way of dealing with the interactive tasks. Each window will carry a context for the window, so anything I want to change in a window is carried with the window, moves along with the window. Let's go faster. And the data also has a context. If you right-click on any data object, you get a set of tasks or tasks, operations, etc., relevant to that object. Well, I think in the interest of time, I won't go through much more. The key thing here is we did measure the improvement. So what we're looking at here is a Petrel 2013 session running, doing the same tasks as 2014. And we built a special tool that would track the cursor movement. We measure how far you've gone, how many times you've clicked. So this was what we said about quantifying the productivity. So at the end of the day, we're able to go to our clients and say, look, we've done this work, and you now have 30% less mouse clicks, or you have 40% less mouse movement. And that's critical for these guys dealing with things like RSI. And companies like ExxonMobil, Chevron, they're fanatic on RSI. So being able to go to them with statistics like this that say, we've decreased the long mouse travel from 10% to 2%, we've decreased the number of mouse clicks by 58%, etc., is very important, and it shows that we're making progress. The value there, for our clients, of course, if they adopt this, they're going to be more productive and have decreased training, so that's a great selling point for our software. For us, of course, we're all about selling this stuff, so we believe it will help us sell more. But I think more importantly, when you've got a product that's now reaching some kind of maturity, unless you do this, your products will die. So you have to go through this pain at some point. But it's a pain, it's a task you really have to manage. And this was a case where 2013 we were going to release, and we said, stop the job. It's not good enough. Back to the drawing board for another year. Because if you go out with a wrong version of this, you destroy your whole reputation. So for the bigger Schlumberger organization, it's really helping all the different segments plug into this environment, because you can make your own customized interface that might be just suitable for guys doing, say, MDT work, or make an MDT ribbon or something like that, or a shale ribbon. And key to the whole process was feedback. We went out in beta testing to a vast number of clients and got, we didn't release until we got this kind of evidence, where 98% of the clients came back and said, we like it, we'll go for it. It took me only a week to learn. I really like this thing not being, being modeless now. It's cleaner. We had very few clients came back and said, I'm sorry, I'm never going to move to it. We did actually keep the old interface available so they could switch, but nobody has, and that's a testament to the quality of the product. Yes, it's the last slide. So, the list of authors on this should have been all of the SIS organization, because this project was vast. This team were all very, very active. But the whole organization of SIS had to step up to this. From commercialization, testing, the guys out in the field, everybody had to buy into this solution. So they all deserve praise in making it happen. And I think we've got a good product for the next 10 years until we have to do it all again. Thanks very much.